Kiss
Can you
my
kiss
son.
her tight to
I
me?
can kiss my son. Jaden, come on.
Yaz's mom brought Yaz to Charlie, and Charlie came and got me and was like, "What you want to do?" I start writing for Yaz, like that's why it makes me mad to see what's going on with him right now. Like I can't believe what I'm watching.
Right.
I can't believe what I'm watching. Like for you to flip that way and turn like you doing gay porn and like what is wrong with you, man?
Surrounded by a whole lot of strength, he's surrounded by a whole lot of love, and all he has to do is add discipline.
Who is best to give you advice? And it's Will Smith, and I'm getting so much good advice.
Jaguar Wright told us that Bashir Gray's downfall happened because of Will Smith and Diddy, and now look at Bashir Gray's X account. This is absolutely crazy. Jaguar Wright called this out months ago, and now look what we're witnessing in real time. Jaguar Wright literally told us that Bashir Gray was abused by Diddy and Will Smith, and he went running away from them. And we saw his downfall happen in real time.
If you thought you'd seen every Hollywood controversy already, think again. This is celebrity press, where whispers turn into headlines and reactions become revolutions. When 50 Cent decided to speak on the conversation swirling around Will Smith, the internet didn't just react, it froze. Not because of a single accusation, but because of a pattern fans say they'd been watching for years. Screenshots resurfaced. Old interviews got clipped. Comment sections turned into courtrooms overnight. People weren't asking what happened anymore, they were asking why these moments keep showing up. If you were in this position, same spotlight, same pressure, same millions of eyes, what would you do? Stay silent? Laugh it off? Or fire back before the narrative hardens? The internet couldn't believe it, and you won't either. Bro said too much, and now everybody's connecting dots. One comment read, "We're not here to decide guilt or innocence."
No, that your husband was doing things to boys and did stuff to your son, and you ain't do shit about it. Bilal told me everything.
Their good friend who.
Bilal told me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jada, he told me that you knew Will was f***ing your child, as he did. Wonder why he left that out of his Tasha K interview.
In that interview, he said a lot. He said a lot.
He said everything but the thing that was important. That he know that Will Smith, Jaden, he rapped Sheeran, he rapped Meek Mills, and you know it, Bilal. Now I don't give no f*** how far in the desert you run. You'll go from a Philly nigga to a sand, but they'll still get you.
He's Philly though, Jay. It's Philly.
You know, he Meek Milk. As far as I'm concerned, he Meek Milk. Added to the honeycomb. You got a meal.
So you believe the Dwayne Martin story that could have happened?
Of course, everybody know that shit. Everybody knew they was f***ing, just ain't nobody know.
We're here to break down how a reaction spiraled into a storyline and why it refuses to die. Let's break it all down, and trust me, it gets uglier. Before the latest wave of clips and commentary ever hit timelines, Will Smith's public image already lived in two realities. On one side, the polished legacy blockbusters, awards, family branding, motivational speeches about growth and healing. On the other, a more complicated narrative that fans say began years ago, built not on one scandal, but on a series of moments that never fully faded. That tension matters, because when reputations are this big, they don't crack all at once. They chip. Enter 50 Cent, known as much for trolling as for timing. He doesn't usually jump into conversations unless there's cultural momentum. When he did, it wasn't with a manifesto. It was with a reaction, short, sharp, and perfectly calibrated for the internet. Not an accusation.
I open the door to Dwayne's dressing room, and that's when I see Dwayne and having with Will.
Let me process that for a second.
There was a couch, and Will was bent over on the couch, and Dwayne was standing up, killed, murdered, like it was.
Not a confession. A nudge. The kind that says, "You see this too, right?" And once the door opens, the internet rushes in. Fans began pulling old clips, not as proof, but as context. Interviews where boundaries felt blurred. Moments where mentorship and proximity overlapped in ways that made viewers uncomfortable, especially in hindsight. None of these clips were new. That's the unsettling part. They'd been online for years, archived, ignored, or dismissed as harmless. But narratives change when public trust does. What once looked normal starts to look questionable when the lens shifts. Alleged DMs started circulating, not explicit, not verified, but suggestive enough to spark debate.
Was shared by Diddy's former bodyguard, Gene Deal, and the details were wild.
At a birthday party that I think either Matt Damien was giving for Ben Affleck, it was just a little gathering. It was at the Four Seasons. Will Smith and his sister and her husband, we were all sitting on this side of the room. Matt Damien, Ben Affleck, Jennifer Lopez, Puff, Will Smith, and Jada, and they were sitting on the other side of the room. So I know Puff so well. He stood up. When he stood up, and then he was like this, you know, like that. I went over towards him, and he said to me, he said, "Yo, I think Will and Jada."
Messages that read like encouragement, advice, check-ins. To supporters, they showed care. To critics, they showed access. And access, in Hollywood, is everything. Screenshots multiplied, each one framed with captions like "pattern," and "why does this keep happening?" The comments did the rest. Reaction channels piled on. Blogs hedged their language carefully, allegedly, according to fans, internet speculation. That caution didn't slow the spread. If anything, it fueled it. Because ambiguity invites participation. Everyone gets to be a detective when the evidence is emotional, not factual. 50 Cent didn't escalate with details. He didn't need to. His role was amplification, not authorship. By acknowledging the chatter, he legitimized it in the eyes of many viewers. Not because he proved anything, but because he's known for saying what others won't, especially when the culture is already leaning that way. When someone like him weighs in, silence from others starts to feel louder. What made this moment volatile was timing. Hollywood was already in a reckoning phase, audiences re-examining power dynamics, mentorship relationships, and the cost of fame on young careers. Against that backdrop, every old story takes on new weight. Fans began asking whether success stories had shadows, and whether silence had protected more than it revealed. Will Smith's camp stayed quiet. No counter-narrative. No clapback. For some, that was dignity. For others, it was strategy. In internet culture, silence is rarely neutral. It's interpreted. Screenshots of silence trend just as fast as statements. The conversation wasn't about one person anymore. It was about systems, how mentorship works in Hollywood, how proximity to power can blur lines, and how narratives form long before facts are established. Supporters argued this was a smear cycle, fueled by trolls and opportunists. Critics argued that repeated discomfort from audiences isn't coincidence, it's feedback. Meanwhile, 50 Cent's involvement kept the story alive without anchoring it to a single claim. Every repost, every reaction video, every sarcastic caption added another layer. Because nothing screams coincidence like the same questions popping up for a decade, one tweet joked. Humor became the delivery system for unease. By the end of that week, the pattern wasn't defined, but it was named. And naming something changes how it's seen. Old moments became exhibits. New reactions became chapters. And the narrative, once framed, proved hard to contain. But what came next, even his enemies didn't expect. Picking up exactly where that tension hardened into a storyline, the conversation didn't explode because of a new accusation. It exploded because people started mapping timelines. Fans weren't asking what anymore. They were asking when, how often, and why the same names kept reappearing. And once timelines get involved, narratives stop feeling random. Old interviews resurfaced, not clipped for shock but for tone. Viewers replayed moments where praise sounded intense, where guidance felt personal, where access looked unusually close. Again, none of it proved anything. That's the point. The power of this moment wasn't evidence, it was accumulation. One clip alone means nothing. 10 clips over 10 years start to feel like a story. Blogs began running explainers, carefully worded breakdowns of the chatter. They didn't allege misconduct. They asked questions. And questions travel faster than answers. Screenshots of alleged DMs, blurred names, cropped timestamps circulated with captions like, "Context matters." Commenters argued over interpretation. Was this mentorship? Was it networking? Or was it something that crossed invisible lines fans say shouldn't be crossed? Reaction channels took sides. Some defended fiercely, pointing out how fame warps perception and how kindness gets misread when money and power are involved. Others argued that Hollywood mentorship has a long history of blurring boundaries, and that audiences are finally comfortable saying when something feels off. The split wasn't about facts, it was about trust. Then came the sarcastic commentary that always signals a story's second act. Memes. Side-by-sides. Tweets that read, "Because nothing screams coincidence like deja vu." The humor wasn't cruel, it was uneasy. Laughing as a way to process discomfort. The more people joked, the more they shared. The more they shared, the bigger the footprint grew. Insiders, always anonymous, fed the cycle with vague claims. Everyone knew. This wasn't a secret. Industry stuff. None of it verifiable. All of it combustible. The language stayed slippery, just enough to avoid outright claims while keeping the conversation boiling. Every allegedly felt like gasoline. What complicated matters was the absence of a clean counterstory. No long interview. No documentary rebuttal. Just silence and occasional platitudes about growth and privacy. Supporters praised the restraint. Critics said restraint looked like avoidance. And in the court of public opinion, optics are verdicts. Meanwhile, the role of amplification came under scrutiny. Why did this moment catch fire now? Analysts pointed to cultural timing. Audiences are more skeptical. More willing to re-examine old narratives. More suspicious of power dynamics that once passed without comment. In that climate, a single nudge from a loud voice can tilt the room. The conversation shifted from personalities to patterns. Not accusations, patterns. Repetition without resolution. Mentorship stories that end abruptly. Careers that stall after proximity to power. None of these are crimes. But together, they formed a shape that people couldn't unsee once named. Fan reactions turned intense. Some pleaded for fairness, warning against trial by internet. Others demanded accountability, arguing that accountability starts with asking hard questions. Threads stretched for hundreds of replies. Moderators struggled to keep things civil. Words like context, consent, and boundaries trended alongside memes and reaction GIFs. At the center of it all sat a paradox. The louder the speculation grew, the thinner the facts felt. And yet, the thinner the facts, the more people talked. Because the story had become about how stories form, how ambiguity breeds certainty online. As days passed, the cycle fed itself. New reaction videos referenced older reaction videos. Blogs cited other blogs. The original spark became secondary to the blaze. The narrative no longer needed new material. It had momentum. Then, just as fatigue threatened to cool the conversation, a fresh angle surfaced. Not a revelation. A reframing. Someone connected a previously overlooked interview to a recent reaction, suggesting the timeline wasn't just repeating, it was evolving. The implication wasn't wrongdoing. It was relevance. And relevance is the oxygen these stories breathe. Suddenly, a different question dominated feeds. If nothing illegal happened, why does this conversation keep resurfacing? Why does it refuse to settle? Why does every attempt to move past it pull more ice back in? That question split the audience again. To some, it proved the narrative was hollow. To others, it proved the opposite, that unresolved discomfort has a way of returning until it's addressed. And just when everyone thought the debate had reached its ceiling, when defenses and critiques felt fully aired, another name came up. Not shouted. Not trending. Just enough to tilt the balance and send the conversation into a direction no one was ready for. The moment that final name entered the conversation, the energy shifted from loud debate to quiet unease. Not because it confirmed anything, but because it reminded people how long this story had been circling without landing. The internet didn't erupt this time. It paused. And pauses online usually mean one thing: people are recalculating. What followed wasn't a flood of new clips or screenshots. It was a change in posture. Reaction videos slowed down. Thumbnails softened. Commentary became more careful. Creators who had rushed to take sides started hedging, saying things like, "This deserves nuance," and "We don't actually know." That turn didn't erase the narrative, it matured it. And a mature controversy doesn't scream. It lingers. Behind the scenes, the toll became visible in subtle ways. Fewer public appearances. Less casual engagement. Statements that sounded rehearsed but exhausted. Not a collapse, containment. The kind that comes when a public figure realizes the argument isn't about winning anymore, it's about preventing further drift. When the ground beneath your legacy feels unstable, you stop running and start bracing. Fans noticed the emotional cost too. Longtime supporters spoke about disappointment not because of proven wrongdoing, but because ambiguity erodes trust. Critics, meanwhile, softened their language, shifting from accusations to questions about systems and responsibility. The conversation stopped asking who did what and started asking how stories like this survive for so long without resolution. That reframing mattered. It took the spotlight off individuals and placed it on structures, mentorship and entertainment, access to power, the pressure on younger careers, the blurred lines between guidance and influence. People shared personal anecdotes about uncomfortable experiences in other industries. The story widened beyond one name, becoming a mirror for collective unease. There were attempts at redemption, too. Quiet philanthropy headlines. Focused interviews about craft and growth. Emphasis on family, privacy, and boundaries. Some saw sincerity. Others saw strategy. In a culture fluent in PR, even genuine steps can be read as calculated. That's the price of living in public memory. And then there was fatigue. Outrage has a shelf life. As new scandals crowded timelines, this one receded, not resolved, but archived. Clips stopped trending. Threads slowed. The algorithm moved on. Yet the residue remained. Search results don't forget. Compilations don't disappear. Context doesn't reset when attention shifts. What lingered most was the discomfort of not knowing. No leaked tape that tied things together. No definitive rebuttal that closed the loop. Just fragments, moments, reactions, silences assembled into a story that felt real to many without being provable. That's the most dangerous kind of narrative, because it's resistant to correction. Some viewers found peace in skepticism, reminding themselves that patterns can be illusions and coincidence can masquerade as meaning. Others felt validated, arguing that repeated discomfort is itself a signal worth examining. Both positions lived side by side, neither able to extinguish the other. In the end, the aftermath wasn't a downfall or a vindication. It was distance. Distance between past and present. Distance between public image and private life. Distance between certainty and doubt. The noise faded, but the questions stayed, parked in the background, waiting for the next spark. That's how these stories conclude in the digital age. Not with closure, but with sediment. Layers of interpretation settle over time, shaping how history is remembered more than any single fact ever could. People move forward. Careers continue. But the narrative becomes part of the landscape, always there, rarely addressed. No one vanished overnight. No confession arrived to reset the frame. Instead, the spotlight dimmed, leaving behind a silhouette shaped by years of reactions and reinterpretations. And when the feeds finally refreshed and attention drifted elsewhere, one truth remained harder to ignore than any rumor: sometimes the most powerful stories aren't proven or disproven, they're inherited. She vanished without a trace, but the secret stayed. This is where the clips stop looping, but the conversation shouldn't. Because what you just watched wasn't a verdict, and it wasn't an accusation. It was a mirror. A look at how reactions turn into narratives, how patterns get named, and how silence can be louder than statements. When voices like 50 Cent weigh in on the discourse around Will Smith, it doesn't settle anything, it accelerates it. And acceleration is where meaning gets distorted, sharpened, or cemented. So here's the real question: if you were in that spotlight, same pressure, same scrutiny, same internet detectives freezing frames and reading tone, what would you do? Would you clap back and risk feeding the fire? Would you stay silent and let others write your story? Or would you try to rise above it and accept that ambiguity is the cost of fame? The internet couldn't believe it, and it's still arguing about it. Some see coincidence. Others see a pattern. And most people live somewhere in between, unsure but uneasy. That discomfort is the point. Because culture changes when enough people ask the same question, even without a single clear answer. Now it's your turn. What do you think is really going on here? Is this a case of overanalysis and online obsession, or does repeated discomfort deserve a closer look? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Keep it respectful. Keep it real. And if you want more deep dives like this, the kind that break down the moment without pretending to solve it, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because this story isn't about one clip or one reaction. It's about how narratives are born, and why they refuse to die.